Hello! I got art supplies. I saw a YouTuber recently who bought a bunch of art supplies from Five Below. I had no idea Five Below sold art supplies. So I'm curious and I decided to do a challenge using only using art supplies from Five Below. So the first supply I got were these fine point watercolor pens, which were $5 and they are 12 count. So I don't see any claims on these at the moment. The only thing that I know are that these are watercolor pens, and I've only heard of watercolor brush pens, so I've never seen fine point pens. I'm pretty curious to try these out. They have fun names. One of them's called like Go Green, Hello Sunshine. I cannot speak today, but I'm excited to try these out. The second supply I found were these 70-piece colored pencils, and I'm pretty surprised because they were only $5, so I'm pretty curious to see if these are cheap because they're cheap in quality or if they're just a really good deal. The brand is called Creative Gallery, at least that's what I'm assuming because the brand name isn't on the actual pencil. And the only claim I see on these colored pencils is that they're fine artist material. So we're going to test it out and see if they actually are. The last art supply I bought was a sketchbook, and I'm really excited to try this out because it's hardcover, so this looks nice. And there's 192 pages. Now, it wouldn't let me actually open the thing because there's plastic over it, so I'm not quite sure if the pages are really thin or really thick, so I can't wait to try this out.
Here are all of the prices for the things I bought. I highlighted them, but for some reason they're not really showing up in this light, but they are all $5. And the reason why I crossed this out was because this was an item that I got that wasn't an art supply, so it wasn't really relevant, and I of course blacked out the address because I don't need creepy people showing up and knowing where I live.
Anyway, I don't like super long intros, so without further ado, let's get down to the video.
You have no idea how happy I am to delete that footage. First off, I'm happy because I was super awkward on camera because I was really uncomfy on camera at the time, so it showed. And another reason why I was happy was because it's been sitting in my storage and crowding it up for months because I could not think of what to do. I took the supplies home and I just could not think of anything, and I have no idea why. But finally I was able to get some inspiration, so here we go. The first thing I did was I took all of the contents out of their packages and bound them together with rubber bands just because I didn't feel like storing them in the packages. And then the first supply I decided to test out were the watercolor fine point pens. I had super high hopes for these. I was really excited to try them, but I also at the same time did not expect much from them, which was a good thing because they did not provide much. I tried my best to blend them out. The more I was blending them out, I found it was starting to get easier, like I was getting the hang of it, but still they weren't blending out enough that I would be comfortable blending them out directly on a page. So that made me a bit sad. But I did two swatches. One was a swatch just to see if I would be able to blend them out, and the other swatch was just to see what the color would look like without blending it out. However, clever Jessica came up with a plan, and she had a backup plan because she had a feeling this would not blend out. So you will see what I'm going to be doing with these pens instead. Then came the time to swatch the colored pencils, and that was when the real problems started to happen. The first thing I noticed was that there was very little pigment in these. No matter how hard I pressed on some of the colors, I could not get the color to lay on dark. Not only that, but I started to notice that I was pressing so hard this weird smudging kind of thing started to happen. The best way I can explain it is that if you painted over furniture and put a wax over it. I was pressing so hard when I was coloring an attempt to get a darker color, the top layer of wax started to come off. The paint was still there, but the wax wasn't. This really frustrated and irritated me, to be quite honest, but little did I know that these were going to be the worst of my problems with this piece.
We love that.
That's okay. That's interesting. Yeah, notice the smearing. Hey guys, I'm back. With how busy I have been with school lately, I haven't had any time to really continue with this project. That and seeing how the colored pencils and watercolor fineliner pens did not work out very well, I also kind of just lost motivation to really start the project. But those stack of pencils and pens have been haunting me since July, and I finally put my foot down and told myself I will finish this project. But yeah, I went ahead and did the sketch off camera as per the usual. Since I know that some people do like seeing what artists do their sketches, just let me know in the comments if you want to start seeing my sketching process included in the videos, since I do want to put out content that you like. I usually don't include the footage just because the lighting makes it hard to see the outline of the sketch, and the majority of the time that I sketch, I just draw and erase a lot, so that can be pretty boring sometimes. But yeah. Since the sketchbook was wrapped in plastic at the store, I did not get a chance to feel the paper and see what it was like. Now, obviously, while I know that Five Below most likely would not include top-notch artist paper in their sketchbooks for $5, I was thinking that the books would at least have thick paper to make the beginner artist think that the paper is different from standard papers that you can just buy anywhere. But boy, was I wrong. When I opened the book, the first thing I noticed was it had the texture of construction paper. While I do like rough paper to draw on, the roughness of construction paper makes it really hard for any medium to really glide on the paper in a smooth fashion. When I flipped the page, it was, oh god, I can't even. I was even more horrified when I realized that it was a thin piece of paper. It was as thin as printer paper. It was like two of the worst qualities of artist paper combined onto one page. And the reason why I prefer thicker paper is that I am a very heavy-handed artist. I used colored pencils a lot, and to blend things out, I press really hard onto the page to get a nice blend. To do so, I need thick paper. But I took a deep breath and stupidly attempted to convince myself that I could work with this. After that, the project just kind of went downhill from there. I feel like some of the problems occurred because of the art supplies, but another part of the problem was just also stupid mistakes that I made in this piece. What I decided to draw was a sea turtle Zentangle. For those of you who do not know, Zentangles are random patterns and artist draws with no particular idea how the piece will turn out looking. I figured it would be a good choice to do because my ability to use supplies was very limited. Not only that, but Zentangles are supposed to make you feel relaxed. Since I had been pretty stressed lately, I figured the Zentangle would make me feel better, but boy, was I wrong. When I started coloring in my line art, the first thing I noticed was I really liked using the cooler tones in the piece. It looked nice actually, pretty. And then I had the wonderful idea that I would not only use the supplies from Five Below, but I would use all of them, so that meant I would use all 70 colored pencils and all 12 colors of the fine liners. I actually did end up following through with that, by the way, but yeah. The moment I slapped that warm color next to the cooler colors on the page, I knew I had made a mistake, because what I did not consider was that the Zentangle would most likely look nicer if I had used complementary colors next to each other, or even just stuck to using only warmer colors or only cooler colors for the entire piece. So right off the bat, I'd already started feeling dread and hate for this piece. But just wait, my stupid mistakes just make this better. An attempt to try and save the piece, I had another wonderful idea that I would outline the pieces I colored in with black to make it look better. But boy, did that turn out to be the worst idea ever. When I went to outline the colors in black, the black started to bleed into the lighter colors and create this kind of feathering look. It would not have made me so mad if the colors were still wet, because that would make sense that the black would bleed in. But the thing was, the page was dry. It absolutely made no sense to me, and I was really starting to become irritated that I'd barely gotten into the piece and I already made two major mistakes that made it look terrible. For those of you who do not know me personally, I have a very little patience. I would say the most patience I have had is when I do art, because art usually calms me, and I know it requires a lot of time. But since these supplies were not really cooperating, I was quickly running thin on patience. I eventually decided to outline the line art with black, and when I colored it in with the pens, it did not feather at all, which made absolutely no sense to me because the black was not even dry, yet the colors did not bleed and feather like when I outlined them with black. I really tried my best with this piece. I tried taking many breaks, which is one reason why you may notice a lot of setting changes as I do this piece, and I really tried to keep my patience, but this slowly turned into a catastrophe because the paper was so thin I had to be careful with how hard I pressed on the page. The problem was though, if I didn't press hard on the page, the pigment from the pencils would not show up. Not only that, but since the paper was so rough, it made it even harder for the pigment to show up, so I had to press hard on the page. With those three elements combined, I had to take a lot of breaks because my patience was running so thin and those pencils really gave my hand a cramp. Another thing that absolutely frustrated me was that the ink from the watercolor fineliner pens leaked through the other side of the page, so the whole time I had to keep a piece of paper underneath it so it didn't bleed onto the next one. And then came the part where I screwed up the most. As I neared the end of this piece, I actually started to kind of like it. It did not look too terrible until I made the big mistake that ruined it. Earlier in the video, I figured that even though the watercolor fineliner pens did not melt on the page like I wanted, I could try and melt them enough to add some splatters on the page, but my stupid self forgot that when you add water to a page that is not meant for watercolor, the page will buckle. Not only that, but the page buckles even more when you are working with paper that is not thick, so the piece I actually was starting to like now looks wrinkled and I kind of want to cry, so yeah. My overall thoughts on this challenge. I had a feeling the pencils would be crap, to be honest, just because of how good the deal was. $5 for 70 pencils, it was obviously going to be cheap. The fineliner pens were what disappointed me the most, though, because I actually thought that they would maybe melt like watercolor brush pens, and they even failed to do that. And don't get me started on the paper. While I know I should not expect artist paper, I was at least hoping that the paper would be a bit thicker or at least smoother. Overall, the piece isn't too terrible, I don't think. It just isn't super impressive either. I definitely think I could have done better if I had a little more patience, made better decisions, and used better supplies. I'm not blaming the supplies completely, I just don't think my mindset was the best. I know part of the reason I don't like this piece is because I'm still a bit frustrated about it, but I honestly think I could have created something better. Will I ever buy supplies from Five Below ever again? This may come as a surprise, but I'm actually tempted to buy supplies again just because I want to see if I can create something better. But yeah, I am so sorry you had to listen to me complain this entire video, but yeah. Thank you guys so much for staying for this catastrophe of a video, and I hope you somewhat enjoyed seeing me progressively become more annoyed and make silly mistakes. You should definitely subscribe for more crappy content like this. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next video.